Hello everyone, I thought to show off my Doctor Who DVD chat collection, which I've grown over many years, as you can see. Let's get started. Lost in Time box set, kind of outdated now honestly. We've gone releases of animations like Evil of the Daleks, Last of the Toymaker, and the whole point of this is, you know, the archived episodes, but I guess if you don't want the animations or for the animations not released, it's a good pickup, so I guess I would still recommend it, but it is, you know, really starting to get outdated now. First story, An Unearthly Child. There's a common opinion on this one, and that's the first episode is good, the rest is kind of bad. I disagree. I think the whole story is actually good. Obviously, the first episode is the best, but you know, I like the caveman stuff because you get to see the main characters actually working together before, you know, the much dangerous stories. You know what I mean? So I like An Unearthly Child. The Daleks. Very good story. When I was younger, I struggled to watch through it. I actually used to fall asleep trying to watch this, in fact, because of just how long it was, but I do not have that problem anymore. I can watch the entire thing in one go. I do think it is probably just slightly padded within, you know, between episodes 5 and 6, but it doesn't bother me like it used to. First Dalek story though, very good story. Iconic villain, obviously. The Edge of Destruction. The first 2 parts, in fact. Very good story. I think this is a quite good character development story. Especially for, you know, Barbara and Ian. It kind of addresses that the Doctor isn't really all that great of a guy at this point. Because, you know, in like the Daleks, for example, you literally put them in direct danger of them almost being killed. All because he wanted to see a city. Anyway though, Marco Polo, these missing stories are Weekon's burnt disc, if you're wondering. Marco Polo though, the first pure historical story. It's 7-parter as well, so it's a beefy one. Very good story, in fact, though. I think I'd quite like to see this animated eventually, but I will actually say the Weekon is actually very good. I would say it's probably the best Weekon out there. And it's just brilliant, you know. Marco Polo is a great character in the story. I forget his name, but that guy, the villain of the story, is a great manipulative type of villain. Yeah, it's brilliant. I would recommend Marco Polo. The Keys of Marinus. 6-parter here. It's kind of like a prototype Key to Time. I will actually say though, I do think this is a very fun story, and it's very you get to see a lot of different environments. So, you know, one episode you're in a jungle, another you're in sort of this courtroom, and then another you're in some sort of snowy environment. It's a wonderfully fun story. It's interesting that the Vord, despite the Vords being the main villain, they're not really in it for that much. So I kind of wish we got to see more of them, but I believe the expanded media, like Big Finish, you know, have used them in some stories, so I should probably check it out. The Aztecs. I think probably the best pure historical from the TV series. It's brilliant. It's a 4-parter as well. It's like all the characters have something to do, especially Barbara. Even Ian gets a lot of stuff to do, honestly. It's a great villain as well, and it's also important in tackling the idea of what if you want to change the timeline. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely the best historical story in my opinion. The Sensorites. I see a lot of people calling this story a bit boring, but I quite enjoy it, honestly. I can sit through it just fine. And it's cool seeing, you know, the Sensorites, you know, the cousin of the Ood. It's a good story for Susan as well. And her relationship with the Doctor. Yeah, very good story in my opinion. It's a great mystery story as well, because, you know, you don't really... I mean, you can guess who the villain is, but from looking at it from the character's perspective, it's interesting to see them trying to figure it out. Yeah, good 6-parter in my opinion. And then the finale of season 1, The Reign of Terror, is set in the French Revolution, pure historical. I'll be honest though, I enjoy The Reign of Terror. It's a good story, but it's not one of my favourites. It's just like a 6 out of 10. It's yeah, it's kind of just average, honestly. It's just, the Doctor gets loads of stuff to do, but then the companions are just kind of sat in a jail cell for the entire story. It's cool seeing Napoleon show up towards the end there. And with it being, this is a 6-parter, but some, like, I think 1 or 2 episodes are missing and were animated. I don't think the animation was that great for this one either. Unfortunately, I just didn't really like the direction when they took it in. Right, we're entering into season 2 now. Starting off with Planet of Giants. Very fun story actually. Creative story as well. It's 3 parts. I think I heard originally that this was actually meant to be the first story. Instead they went with the caveman story. It's a fun story though. Basically, what ends up happening is that the Doctor, the companions, that they get shrunk along with the TARDIS, and I mean, so the insects around them are enlarged, and they end up getting entangled in this interesting murder mystery type case from, you know, like the larger humans. Which they didn't really have to do that, honestly. They could have just done shrunk and large insects, and that would have been a fun enough story, but they went beyond that, which is great in my opinion. Expands it a bit more. A Dalek invasion of Earth. Good story, good Dalek story. I do prefer the first Dalek story to it, but I still like this a lot. It's the departure of Susan, which was the first companion departure, and I will say, whilst I do enjoy this story, I do think the pacing does have some issues. But apart from that, it's a very good story. It's quite fun. Quite important to the lore as well in terms of the expanded media and whatnot. And that speech by the Doctor at the end was just fantastic. Starting off with a two-parter now, with the rescue. Very good two-parter actually. The introduction of Vicky. And you got the villain called Killian. Yeah, very good two-parter, kind of. You can kind of tell that the Doctor needs some time to think for himself after, you know, departing from Susan. And I think Vicky kind of helps him with that in turning to his, you know, grandfather type role. The Romans four-parter. This is fantastic. It's a quite comedic story. But despite that, I love that it's comedic. Honestly, it's such a good story. It's so obviously it's a pure historical, as it's called, The Romans. It's like this very good mix between comedic and serious, and it just works. It does, and of course everyone gets stuff to do. They get the Doctor and the companions get split apart. There's a good instance of the main characters getting entangled in the pure historical, and they end up accidentally causing the historical event. Yeah, it's such a good story though. We're still in season 2, but we're in like sort of the midpoint now. Starting off with the Web Planet. I'll be honest, I couldn't get into this story. It's just too long. Like, if they made this a 4-parter, I think it would have worked, but because it's a 6-parter, the pacing just sort of slogs down, unfortunately. I'll continue in giving it rewatches, but to be honest, I've struggled with this one. The Crusade. Good pure historical, actually. I wish. I think they should animate this one next, honestly. Because, you know, it's just a 4-part story. I think it's a pure historical that can be animated to like introduce people, you know what I mean? That aren't like entangled within the classic era. So, you know, your new Who fans are getting into classic for this time. Next story, the Space Museum. Very good story. I do think the ending was a bit lazy, but apart from that, it's a good story. I think the concept's very good, especially in like the first episode where, you know, they see themselves like trapped in a museum. It's quite a creepy concept, honestly. I will say though, like the villains are kind of a bit weak. Honestly, they could have been better, but it's a good story. It's like a 7 out of 10. The Chase, another Dalek story here. Now we're really in I'm getting really into like the heights of like Dalek Mania now. But anyway, the Chase as a story, I really like it, honestly. It's fun. In my opinion, it's fun. Very silly, but still fun. So much happens, honestly, like from episode to episode, like the Daleks build this time machine and they go on a bloody like time hunt you could call it. And they go all over the place, honestly. They go into this, like, haunted house at some point. They go onto this barren desert planet. It's such a fun story, honestly. And then towards the end, they meet, you know, the mechanoids. Yeah, I need to give this one a rewatch, honestly. I haven't watched it in a good bit. Now we're getting into this finale of season 2 with Time Miller. One of my favourite William Hartnell stories, honestly. It's the introduction of someone from the Doctor's race, because Time Lords weren't really established at this point. It's also the first sort of pseudo-historical story where it's like a historical event, but it's an historical event, but there's aliens and stuff involved. And, you know, it's around 1066 England, so it's brilliant. I quite like the chemistry between the meddling monk and the Doctor. And I forgot to mention, by the way, the chase was the departure of Ian and Barbara. The time meddler, you can almost see that having Ian and Barbara would actually help in the story, but obviously inconveniently they left the story before. But anyway, that's season 2. Time then to season 3 with Galaxy 4. This is the first animated release. In a collection anyway. It's an okay story. It's kind of like a 5 out of 10. It's just it's very mid. that's the best way to put it, honestly. It's just very mid. It's like there's interesting concepts in the story, but they're just not developed very well, honestly. Mission to the Unknown. The only one-part story, interestingly enough. As a story, there's not really much to comment on, honestly. It's an interesting watch, though. That's kind of the best way to put it. It's mainly just to act as a prequel for the Daleks' Master Plan, which is, you know, 12-part epic. The Mythmakers, pure historical. This is the departure of Vicky. Good story, but I think I was a bit tired when I watched this, so to be honest, I don't really remember much. So I need to give it a rewatch, honestly. The Daleks' Master Plan. Fantastic story. It is a 12-part epic. So, it's a very long story. It's the longest story they ever did. Unless you count, like, the Trial of a Time Lord, but I wouldn't really count that personally. I will say, though, the Feast of Stephen, that's the one thing I don't like about the story. It's a bit wacky, and not in a good way. But apart from that, this story is fantastic. I mean, in my opinion, this is the best William Hartnell Dalek story, in my opinion. There's so much happens. I think it's one of the darkest stories as well, honestly. Like, episode 12, like, Jesus. You literally see a damn companion AIDS to death. Very good story though. It is written by two people. The first 7 episodes were by Terry Nason, and the other half was written by I have to double check, Dennis Spooner. And I do think the episodes that Dennis Spooner did were still good, but they weren't like as good as the Terry Nason episodes. But then he brought it back during like the last 2 to 3 episodes, so it's okay. Fantastic story as well, and Maverick Chan, played by Kevin Stone, is a brilliant villain. And him and the Daleks are quite balanced quite well as well, unlike another story later on this list. A Massacre. It's alright. It's the introduction of Dodo, which is probably one of the most inconsistent companions, but hey ho. It's a good story, but the Doctor isn't really in it for that much. It's more of a Steven-centric story, which I don't mind. The Ark. A kind of a story that kind of predicted the pandemic almost. Because like the first 2 episodes are like this, virus being brought over, and then everyone's like, oh, it's not a big deal, and then ends up being a big deal, and then 2 episodes, after those 2 episodes, they go back into the TARDIS, and then they come back into the future, and these damn bloody monoids, what was it called, really take over the whole damn colony. Yeah, it's a solid story, I like it. Celestial Toymaker. This was released this year, animated. Very good story. There was some controversy over, the animation quality. Some really didn't like it, and others thought it was quite good. I'm on the side where I actually quite like it. And the story is, of course, fantastic. It's a very wacky story. Very out there. And I think the animation actually works for that as well. I think the cover, I've got to say, the cover is a little bit disturbing. I mean, just look at him. Very fun, creative story though, and the Gunfighters. I think this is a very fun, in my opinion, just pure fun. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I don't know, I really like it personally. Was the music a bit overdone? Yeah, maybe, but it doesn't really bother me all that much, because the story is just so much fun. You know what I mean? The next section now. The Savages. The departure of Steven. Yeah, it's a good story. I think the main thing of this story is that you don't have to have someone to die for evil acts to be done, you know what I mean? I think this story is good at giving out that message. We're the finale of season 3 now with the war machines. underrated in my opinion. I don't see this getting talked about that much, but I quite like it. It's like a prototype Pertwee story. Because you know you got the Doctor working with the military, and very good story, but they kind of did Dodo a bit dirty. Because you know Dodo, she goes into the girl goes away into this car, and then just don't see her like ever again. She just vanishes. Like damn, bye. Yeah, good story though. There was also the introduction of Ben and Polly as well, and now we're going into series 4 or season 4, sorry, with the smugglers. You can really tell with this one that the Doctor is, or well, not the Doctor, but William Hartnell is really starting to kind of get ill, because I think there's like 1 or 2 episodes where he's just not in there. So I personally don't mind this story, unlike other people, but yeah, not the most popular William Hartnell story. And then here was the finale. Well, last William Hartnell story, the 10th Planet. Very good story. Of course, you know, with William Hartnell being ill, there's an episode or 2 where he's just not in it, but despite that, still very good story, like an 8 out of 10. I love the Cybermen, you know, the concepts of them being introduced. I think that Cybermen design as well, the Mondasian Cybermen design is very creepy. I'll give it like an 8 out of 10. And then, of course, with William Hartnell being ill and they still wanted to carry on to the show, they came up with the idea of regeneration, so, you know, it kind of secured the longevity. I also think that this is a great, it's a great story to show what's to come with the Cybermen, you know, in terms of the base Under Siege format. Because, of course, you know, in the Patrick Troughton era afterwards, the Cybermen would be arguably the main villains, you know. Right. Power of the Daleks. Fantastic Dalek story. In my opinion, this is the best Dalek story of just Doctor Who in general, at least on TV anyway. It's a 6-parter. It's also the first story of Patrick Troughton, who is my favourite Doctor, my favourite era. So that's a good thing as well. If you're wondering on the special edition release, by the way, I would actually recommend this rather than the original release, because I think the animation is a lot cleaner. Yeah, it's such a good Dalek story though. They're a lot more, they take on a lot more manipulative approach, but I think that's the Daleks at their best, in my opinion. As you know, there's the human colony and the Daleks are playing off the humans. It's brilliant. The Highlanders. Kind of mid, honestly. It's a pure historical, and it's just kind of not the best pure historical. It is the introduction of Jamie McQuibbin now, so that's something. And this is also the time that pure historicals just weren't working for people anymore, and then after this they just cut them entirely. And I also think that they were more of a William Hartnell thing anyway, First Doctor thing, you know, pure historicals. And, you know, Patrick Tower was more sci-fi related stuff. Underwater Menace. This is animated, I believe it's released this year. Much better than that disastrous original release of a DVD, if you could call it that. Ugh. Oh, that was horrible. I think the animation is an improvement though. I did see some criticism on the direction of the animation, and that doesn't really bother me personally, but yeah, and with this being animated and I didn't have to deal with that awful recon, I do actually appreciate the story a bit more now. Yeah, I'll give it like a 7 out of 10. The Moon Base. Fantastic Cybermen story, honestly. It's very... Cybermen are very good in terms of like their one-line dialogues. And I quite like that they're, you know, hiding in the shadows. Like, this story is what the Cybermen should be, in my opinion. I will say though that because of Jamie originally not meant to be a companion, you can sort of tell in the story because he's kind of sitting on a bed for the whole thing. But apart from that, it's a fantastic Cyberman story. I would recommend it to everyone. And I think it's also another important thing of the story is that it really set in line for what Patrick Troughton's Doctor was. And like, this is like kind of his, almost like his defining story almost in terms of setting the character in stone. Yeah, very good story. The Macra Tower animation. Yeah, I like the Macra Tower a lot. It's kind of disturbing in its, you know, themes, but yeah, very good story. I think the Macra are great villains. You know, you would never expect that these giant crabs are intelligent beings, especially if you're coming from like the main series. I do think the animation, it kind of almost does it too much justice in the sense of like the Macra actually looking good. Because in the original story, they did not look great at all. They were slow and clunky. They, yeah, a lot more to be desired, but it's not really an issue within this animation. And the reason why I think the themes are disturbing, by the way, is because, you know, of the themes of, you know, totalitarianism is quite strong in this story. It's basically Big Brother of crabs. That's the best way to describe it. Next story. The Faceless Ones. 6-parter. Animated again. Good story. It's a part of Ben and Polly. It's a very good mystery story, I think. It's set in Heathrow Airport, if I remember correctly, and yeah, very good mystery story. You don't know, you know, who's the aliens. They kind of, you know, tries to play some trickery on, is this the real version of that person, or is it just an alien, you know? what's happening to these missing passengers, you know, etc. The only downfall of the story is that the ending could have been better, but apart from that, it's very good. It's like a, you know, like an 8 out of 10, 8.5. The finale of season 4, and also the introduction of Victoria Waterfield, Evil of the Daleks. Obviously, I prefer Power of the Daleks over Evil, but, you know, that doesn't really matter to me. I think this is still a fantastic 7-part Dalek story. You know, introduction of the Emperor of the Daleks on TV anyway. I think one of the best things of this one as well is the setting, you know, the Victorian setting. And I think this might be I think the best animation is the Moonbase, but I think this is my second favourite animation. It's brilliant. Yeah, they did, you know, with how good that this was animated and depicted, it kind of gives me hope for how good the animation with Daleks Master Plan will be if they ever end up doing it. I hope they do. We're going into season 5 now, which is actually my favourite season of Doctor Who. Starting off with the Tomb of the Cybermen. So good. I mean, in my opinion, this is the best Cybermen story of the classic era. It's just fantastic. Like, all the side characters are characterized well and have something to do. The Cybermen themselves are great. You know, especially, you know, in that famous scene of when they come out of the tombs. Little booby traps laid everywhere. It's just such a good story. And it's only a 4-part as well. The Abominable Snowman. This is a lot longer of a story. It's a 6-parter. This is the first for the Yeti stories, and, you know, obviously almost everyone prefers the second Yeti story, but I mean, I think this is underrated, honestly. I wasn't sure how I was gonna go into it when the animated released, because I heard a lot of people found it, you know, kind of a slog when they heard it on audio, or watched the recon, but I think this was fantastic, honestly. I think the Great Intelligence is also better in this story than the Web of Fear, despite, you know, the Web of Fear being the superior story. So yeah, I would recommend The Abominable Snowman to people, honestly. The Ice Warriors. The Ice Warriors. I like this story a lot more than the average person, definitely. I'd probably give it like an 8.5 out of 10. It is quite a slow-paced story, but I don't know, I really like it, honestly. I find it very atmospheric. And I think, you know, introduction of the Ice Warriors, a classic villain. Yeah, great 6-parts in my opinion. I quite like to watch this one around like Christmas time as well, because of how atmospheric it is. Now we're getting to the beefy stories of season 5. The Enemy of the Will, just a bona fide classic. It's basically if Doctor Who did James Bond. And Patrick Troughton is just so good in this story in terms of acting, because he's playing 3 roles here. He's playing the Doctor, he's playing the Doctor pretending with Salamander, and he's playing the Salamander pretending to be the Doctor. It's very confusing. The Web of Fear. Obviously, in my opinion, the superior Yeti story. And it's also the introduction of the Brigadier, by the way, which is a classic moment in itself, considering how important that character is. It's very much a great Base Under Siege story, and it almost sort of tests the format of the Pertwee era of it being like Earth-based and working for the military, and it's very good at testing that out, in my opinion. There's always a debate on which one people prefer, the Enemy of the World or the Web of Fear. I personally prefer the Enemy of the World, but, you know, Web of Fear is still a classic. And yes, this is the version of that awful episode 3 animation. I still appreciate it being animated, but it's just not the best quality of it. It's like, even a random guy at a computer could probably animate that. Fury from the Deep. Great story, honestly. A lot of kickoff of the animation for this one, but I honestly didn't have an issue with the animation at all, honestly. Yeah, one of the creepiest stories in my opinion, though. The seaweed is disturbing. It's also the departure of Victoria in the story. Yeah, very good story. It's like those 3 stories right there, just pure, just fantastic perfection. This is kind of the dark horse of season 5. And it's the finale of season 5. It's The Will in Space. It's not really the most popular Cybermen story, and you can see why, because it's just kind of bad, honestly. I hate to say that, because, you know, the Cybermen are so good in the Charlton era, but they honestly really are. They're kind of just bad in this story. I think the pacing is really off as well. It's just, maybe I'll probably see the story more when it's animated, but as of now, it's not a good story. Well, anyway, we're going into season 6 now, which is Troughton's final season, because, you know, he only wanted to do 3 years. With the Dominators. Kind of a silly story, and I don't know, it's one, for me, it's one of those stories that's kind of so bad that it's funny. That's kind of how I look at the Dominators. I think it's also hilarious that they wanted the Quarks to become the replacement for the Daleks. It's like, no chance. The Mindwobber. These stories interesting in that these 2 stories interesting for 5-parters as well for some reason. I think that might be because of the invasion, but I could be wrong. Anyway, the Mindwobber. It's kind of like, it's in the same sense of the Celestial Toymaker, in the sense of being a bit wacky. And I think that, you know, that works well for the story. It's also introduction to the land of fiction. And yeah, it's a brilliant story. I think a highlight for me is when Jamie's face literally gets like missing and he like funny moment. Yeah, good fun story, good story. 8 out of 10. The Invasion, fantastic. Such a good Cyberman story. I will say though, despite it being a Cyberman story, it's not really the highlight of the story for me. For me, it's Tobias Vaughan, which is played by Kevin Stoney, again, the same guy who played Maverick Chan in the Daleks Master Plan, and I think this is his best role out of the two, in my opinion. And it's just brilliant. Cybermen are still good in this story, that's just overshadowed by Tobias Vaughan, in my opinion. This is an 8-parter as well, so it's a long story. But it's just, so good. And this was also the introduction of the unit, and when they really decided that this is what, the Pertwee was going to be, It's just in like Series 7. The Crotons. Forgettable. Honestly, like, it's not that bad of a story, it's just extremely forgettable. That's the best way to put it. It's, Robert Holmes' first story as well, and it's just forgettable. That's the best way to put it. The Seeds of Death. I think this is the best Ice Warrior story. I'll give it like, I don't know, like an 8 out of 8.5. Probably like the same rating as the Ice Warriors, but yeah, decent based on the Seed story. And yeah, best Ice Warrior story in my opinion. I think T-Mat's a very interesting concept as well. This is definitely quicker paced than the Ice Wars as well, so I think more people would like this more because of it. The space pirates. Awful. It's, like, I watched this in one seating and it was the most boringest watches I ever did in my life. It's, Like, it was so bad that I've sworn myself to never watch this story in full again if I ever have to rewatch it. It was just, the most boringest. The Doctor and companions don't even turn up until like halfway through the first episode. It's just, hopefully if this ever gets animated, it'll improve it at least a bit, but as of now, it's kind of near unwatchable with the recon. The War Games. Fantastic. I mean, in my opinion, this is the best classic story of all time. Best Doctor Who story, actually, in fact, of all time. It's just so good. It's a 10-part epic as well, and despite being 10 parts, the pacing is just, it's exquisite. That's the best way to put it. And it's just a wonderful concept of the story. All the side characters are fantastic. Obviously, I mentioned the pacing was great. It's just a 10 out of 10 perfect story. Just pure perfection. So, I'd recommend everyone watch the War Games. That was also the last Paris 2000 story. So, now we're moving into the Jon Pertwee ever with Spearhead from Space. Fantastic beginning introduction story. It's like for me, this is like the textbook example of like an introduction story for Doctor, or just Doctor Who in general. It's also the first time Doctor Who in colour, the first time of a lot of things, honestly. First time of the Autons, first time of, you know, a lot more of the Doctor's biology being revealed. The first story of season 7. Brilliant. This is also the introduction of Unit family, if that makes sense. Like, yes, the Unit was introduced in the Invasion, but this was the beginning of Unit being the main thing for a couple of seasons, you know. As a story in itself, though, it's fantastic. Yeah, I don't have any complaints, really. It's fantastic. Autons are brilliant. I think with this being shot on film as well, it's shot extremely well. Yeah, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, something like that. Very good. Right. Next story. Doctor Who and the Silurians. So we're in season 7 now. It's quite in terms of story-wise, it's a short season, and of course, it's the limitations of episodes. So beforehand, it would be 45 episodes or something, whereas now it's, 26, I believe, or 25, 34, something like that. Anyway, Doctor and the Silurians, great story. These are all 7-parters, by the way. So they're beefy stories. I think this is kind of when Doctor Who started getting quite political, and like dark type of storytelling. So, in this story of nuclear energy, and stuff like that. The Silurians themselves, great concept. I've heard people don't like the music in this story, but I quite like it personally. It sounds quite alien to me. A very good story. The Ambassadors of Death. Usually people would regard this as like the weakest of season 7, and maybe it is for me as well, I don't know, but I do think this story is underrated. I don't think this one gets talked about enough. Yeah, fantastic story there. Quite mysterious as well, because you have all these characters, but you don't know, the intentions of them, and they're all hiding in the shadows. And it's also a great example where the aliens aren't actually the villains for once. It's just the humans. Inferno. Fantastic story. It's quite dark, this one, You literally have like an entire planet imploding in flame. It's quite heavy stuff. Like, imagine seeing that as like a kid. Yeah. Also the parallel universe is fantastic involved, and I also like the Primoids. It's a great story. That was the finale of season 6. Now we're getting into season 8 with Terror of the Autons. Great Auton story. I don't think this is as good as Spearhead from Space, but still very good. I do think, even though I would regard Spearhead from Space as a better Doctor Who story, I do think that this is a better Auton story, if that makes sense. And another thing that I didn't mention of the story as well is that it's the introduction of Roger Delgado's master. It's just great introduction, and in my opinion, he's the best master we'll ever have, in my opinion. No one will ever top Delgado. Mind of Evil. Great story. Again, of course. It's very it's a bit controversial in terms of, you know, the concept of the prison reform system. But still a good story, in my opinion. Delgado is top notch in the story, in my opinion. And there's a criticism of season 8, actually, speaking of Delgado. It's that in season 8 there's a master story in every story of the season, but you can't complain about more Delgado. Come on. I also want to mention, but with the companions, Liz was introduced in season 7, and then she departed in Inferno, and then Joe was introduced in Tale of the Autons. Fun fact, this is the first classic story I ever saw. I'd back in, like, I don't know, like 2012 or something. The Claws of Axos. Yeah, because this is my first classic story, I do have some soft spot nostalgia of this one, so I'm a little biased here, but brilliant in my opinion. It's a great example of the, you know, the villain, the master, and the doctor, you know, being able to work together. You don't really see that in other villain and heroes in TV shows. Colony in Space. It's definitely the weakest in season 8, but still a good story. It's definitely very human focused, because, you know, it's based on this colony, and then there's, you know, this dispute with this company, and I think Delgado's master also kind of appears like a bit later in this one compared to other stories, but still very good in my opinion. The finale of season 8 now, with the Daemons. Great finale, a Hammer House of Horror type story. As you can see, it's kind of demonic. The only criticism I do have of the server is I wish there's more introductions between the Master and the Doctor, but apart from that, it's a very good story. This is a 5-part, interesting enough, though. Anyway, that was season 8. Now we're going into season 9. Day of the Daleks. A very good, decent Dalek story. I think the Dalek stories in the Pertwee are a bit weaker, but that's fine. It's still good stories in my opinion. Also introduction to the Ogrons, which are kind of like the Daleks' henchmen. In the Pertwee era anyway. Curse of Peladon. Great political story, in my opinion. Yeah, it's kind of like... It's kind of quite relevant to the UK as well, because it's kind of very, like, it's almost like paralleling on like the UK, like joining the EU, except it's like, you know, Peladon joining the Galactic Federation of it's called. So there's a lot of relevant themes in there. Yes, the classic of season 9, the Sea Devils. Fantastic, just a bona fide classic. I think this is also Delgado's and Pertwee's chemistry just at its best. I mean, they literally have like a fencing fight or a sword fight. It's brilliant, and the Sea Devils themselves are brilliant. They're not more aggressive than the Silurians, because of course, you know, both very similar concepts. The Mutants. It's a good story, but it kind of looks bad in places. I'd give it like a 7.5 out of 10, maybe an 8. It's a decent 6-star though. It's like, it does a good job at depicting how, you know, colonials, you know, could be treated by their colonial masters, you know. Yeah, very good story in that sense there. The Time Monster, the finale of season 9. Great story. At least in my opinion anyway. Well, let's be honest here, it's kind of a mixed bag. I enjoy it, but it's I enjoy it, but like there's flaws in that. Let's just put it there. Entering into series 10 now with, if I can count, the 3 Doctors. I think the best anniversary story, honestly. Of course, this is great because, you know, you get to see the Patrick Troughton and John Boyega playing off each other, of course. Sadly, this was also the last story of William Hartnell, so... And then, you know, he'll die a year or 2 later, unfortunately. Also the introduction of Omega, who was a quite cool villain in my opinion. And I think, if I remember correctly, this is also, you know, when the Time Lords are, like, actually introduced proper, I think. Oh no, Gallifrey, sorry. Yeah, because the Time Lords were introduced in the War Games. Next story, the Carnival of Monsters. Very fun story in my opinion. I love the Jurassics. Yeah, great story. I think it might be one of my favourite Robert Holmes scripts, actually. And I quite like the concept of the scope. Frontier in Space. Very underrated in my opinion, and also, unfortunately, the last appearance of the Delgado Master, because, you know, he would end up dying in a car crash, unfortunately. I also love the reveal towards the end of, you know, with the Daleks. And I also think the Draconians are a very cool monster. This is an underrated classic in my opinion. That then leads into Planet of the Daleks, which is the common opinion of this one is that it's a cheap rehash of the original Dalek story, but I still quite like it, you know. And yes, you can definitely see very, you know, a lot of similarities, but I still like it. Into the finale of season 10 now, with the Green Death. Fantastic story. Great finale. I think, in my opinion, this is the best companion departure. You know, with, you know, when he, you know, rises into the sunset out of her. That's, great. You know, giant maggots, of course. They're terrifying. This is a good finale, to be honest. I did hear, actually, in, like, the expanded media that, like, the boss was meant to be, like, something to do with, like, Tobias Thorne or something. Like, interesting. I should read more into that. It's Time Warrior. We're getting into season 11 now, which is, you know, Pertwee's last season. This is a bona fide classic. Introduction of the Sontarans. Also the introduction of Sarah Jane Smith as well, actually. Yeah, I think the thing that makes the story just so good is that it's a pseudo-historical, and it puts, like, an element that's alien into a historical environment and just works perfectly. Like, Iron Gwon's and Lynx's chemistry is just hilarious and comedically just amazing. Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Just ignore the horrible dinosaurs and you have a good time with this story. Because it is a good story in my opinion, it just has horrible dinosaurs. Death to the Daleks. Probably the weakest Pertwee Dalek story for me, but I still like it. It's still a good story. It's kind of similar to, like, The Chase in the sense that it's quite silly. But, I do think with this one it was interesting to see, like, the Daleks, like, holding, like, machine guns instead of, like, their normal, you know, laser guns they're, like, put into a situation. The Monster of Plodon. I used to always struggle with the story. I just couldn't get into it. I found it boring, but I rewatched it this year with, like, a friend, and, like, I really enjoyed it, honestly. I don't know why, but I did. Yeah, I guess I still prefer the Curse of Peladon, but I guess I'm a Monster of Peladon fan now. Who would have thought? Planet of the Spiders. This is the last Pertwee story. It's good, I enjoy it, but let's be honest, it's kind of a weak finale. It's kind of like a 7 out of 10 situation. Like, it's good, but, you know, for a finale, it could have been better in my opinion. And into the Tom Baker era now, it's just quite a lot lined up here. Starting off with season 12 with Robots. Yeah, decent introduction. You definitely can tell that, you know, Tom Baker isn't quite well versed into the role yet. You know, I feel like you see that a lot more, like, you know, like the Ark in Space, but still good story. Some comedic elements in there as well, and also the introduction of Harry Sullivan. Let's get that back. Ark in Space, classic. Come on, everyone likes the Ark in Space. At least everyone I know, anyway. I heard that this is like might have inspired like Alien or something, and you definitely can see it. Yeah, come on, that's a classic story. Also, the introduction of like Nerva Beacon, which I think helped the story a lot in terms of the environment. Got a two-parter here with the Sontaran experiment. Yeah, great little Sontaran story. I think the Time War is obviously, you know, a lot better, but still a nice little story. Ooh, got a good one here, if I can. Yeah. Genesis of the Daleks. Fantastic. Like, I know it's like, you know, popular to say, but obviously this is one of my favourites. I mean, it's just a 6-part epic, you know what I mean? This is, you know, one of my favourite Doctor Who stories. And even though it is technically a Dalek story, it's, you know, it's mainly focused on Davros. That's like the highlight of this story, you know? And like the Khaled bunker and the Fowls, and it's a brilliant story. Got the finale of season 12 now with Revenge of the Cybermen. Not a very popular Cybermen story, but I do actually enjoy this. I have a soft spot for this. Does it have some flaws? Yeah, like the Cybermen voices, for example. I enjoy it, honestly. I think it's a good story. I quite like the Volga as well. We're getting into series 13 now, and this is usually regarded as like the golden age for a lot of people. With Tell of the Zygons. Great introductions to the season. This is also the last like Brigadier story for a long while. I think the interesting one about this as well is that it's like the last, like, for a story that has just you know, like a one-off like monster. I think it, you know, it does a good job at making them iconic, because that's just how good Doctor Who was, you know, at this point. The Android Invasion. Good mystery story. Like, the first episode of this is fantastic, honestly. I don't think the same amount of quality quite holds up to the rest of it, but it's still a very good story. The Brain of Morbius. Yeah, I like The Brain of Morbius, honestly. I think it's underrated. I don't think it's talked about enough. I know there's some wonky camera work in there, but I have still a very enjoyable story, in my opinion. Also, the introduction to the Sisterhood of Khan. I just realised, actually, I forgot to talk about the Pyramids of Mars. How dare I? Pyramids of Mars. Obviously a classic. I mean, I rewatched this a couple of times this year actually, and I just enjoy it. That the more I rewatch it, honestly, it's just classic. And Sutek's a brilliant villain. Right, now to the Seeds of Doom, the finale of season 13. 6-part story. I quite like the Quinoids. I think the concept of them is cool. I think that I can't remember his name, but the big human villain guy. You know, the green or whatever his name is. Yeah, he's crazy. He literally wanted like the Doctor to be grinding into his garden. Jesus, it's insane. Quite good story though. We're into series 14 now, the last season of the Philip Hinchcliffe ever. The Mask of Mandragora. It's a good story. I feel like I don't like it as much as some other people though for some reason. So I feel like I do need to give it a wee watch or two. Now we have the Face of Evil, Sarah Dane's final story. I like the Hand of Fear personally. I do know that's kind of like divided, but yeah, this is a story for me. We do have a bona fide classic coming up though, The Deadly Assassin. Just an epic story. I mean, like, especially when they start getting to like the psychedelic area, those are just pure classic television. This is one of my favourite Tom Baker stories. This is such a good story. I remember watching this when I was younger, as like a one-off as well, and I remember just being like terrified of it when I was younger. We have The Face of Evil now. I haven't watched this in a while. Honestly, I need to rewatch some more Tom Baker stories because it's been a little while. Face of Evil though, good story. Had some good mystery in there with, you know, with that right there. Also introduction of Leela, which is, in my opinion, one of the best companions to a classic ever. Because of how unique she was. Robot of Death. Great story. I find this one to be very like fun. I think that's his main benefit to it. That's just extremely fun. Getting to the finale of season 4 now with The Talons of Wen Chiang. Yes, it's a little racist, but if you just look past that just a list slightly, it's an enjoyable story. I'll just leave it at that. Horror of Fangwok, fantastic. I think this is the best sort of Hammer House of Horror type of story in Doctor Who. I do know some people don't like the Wutan. They don't like how it's sort of depicted, but I quite like it personally. Yeah, fantastic story. This is also the start of season 15, by the way, in the Graham Williams era. next story, The Invisible Enemy. It's a good story. I just realised I have to stick oops. Invisible Enemy. I quite like it. I would give it an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I've found this one enjoyable. Also the introduction of K9, which would I would say it's a good thing, but it had some negatives, you know, with in terms of logistics. Image of the Fendel. Image of the Fendel. It's kind of like the last Philip Hinchcliffe type of style of story in terms of, you know, your classic, like, you know, Hammer House of Horror. Yeah, I quite like Image of the Fendel, and I do believe Russell T Davies always wanted to, like, do a sequel to this, so who knows, we can maybe see that in the modern TV series. Sunmakers, basically just an excuse to complain about taxes. I mean, that's literally the entire story. It's just complaining about taxes. I do enjoy this story though. It's just, that's what it is. It's complaints about taxes. Underworld. Not so great, honestly. It's story isn't awful. It's just the execution. It's just a disaster. It's just awful execution. The Invasion of Time. I remember enjoying parts of it, but I also remember when, like, the Sontarans started getting into it, I didn't really enjoy it as much, so I kind of need to give it a rewatch. So that was the finale of season 15, and now in season 16 now, the Key to Time season. Done off with the Y-Boss operation. I like the Y-Boss operation. It's a good story. I don't think this one gets talked about enough, honestly, or just the Key to Time in general. I'm a big fan of the Key to Time, honestly. It just doesn't seem to get talked much. Speaking of controversy, the Pirate Planet. I like the Pirate Planet. I enjoyed it. I know it's not a popular story, but I enjoyed the Pirate Planet. I don't know what to tell you. I'll just leave it as that. The Stones of Blood. My favourite story of the Key to Time, actually. I enjoyed the Stones of Blood. It's kind of like, it's weird though, because it's like Hammer House of Horror mixed in with like sci-fi. So like the first 2 episodes are very Hammer House of Horror, and then the last 2 episodes are very sci-fi. And I know some people don't like that, and I think that is a valid criticism, but that doesn't bother me personally. The Androids of Tara. This is definitely one of the best stories of the Key to Time. I don't think anyone would disagree with me on that one. Yeah, great story. Almost acts kind of like a pseudo-historical, but like not at the same time. There's very a lot of focus on androids in the story as well. The Power of Kroll, story about a massive squid. Enjoyable story. But yeah, it's just, you know, it's just literally about a giant squid. And then Armageddon Factor. Quite a slow-paced story, but I do think when it starts to get going, it is an enjoyable story in my opinion. I also forgot to mention, but got the introduction of the Romana. There's also another great companion in season 16. Yeah. On the next shelf now. Start off with Destiny of the Daleks. So this is season 17, the final season of the Graham Williams era. What do I think about Destiny of the Daleks? Admittedly, I have a bit of a soft spot for this one, but it definitely has some flaws. The buzzer is one of them. It looks super cheap for some reason. But despite that, it has some good scenes, has good comedic moments. What are they called? I like the Miverin. What are they called? Them things. City of Death, classic. I mean, this is definitely one of the best like stories in like the later Tom Baker era, definitely. I think the atmosphere for this one is fantastic as well. Creature from the Pit. If you just ignore, look past the scene, it is a good story. Let me just rearrange this. Okay. Anyway, Creature from the Pit. Good story, in my opinion, if you just ignore that scene. I feel like this is also one of the best examples of this trying to write out K9. I think it's like within like the first or second episode, they find a reason to write out K9. Just because of how nightmare he was to use logistically. Nightmare of Eden. A good story. Fun fact, actually, the person who made the DVD cover, I think it was Lee Bining. You can see the guys in like the costumes. I didn't actually notice that in the story, so I think I was kind of exaggerated a bit, but oh well. That story, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that story is like whole fame is just on like drugs. Yeah, anyway, this is the finale of season 17, The Horns of Naimon. I couldn't get into this one, you know, I just found it kind of just dull and just boring. This is also the last proper like 6-parter, I believe, because I don't really count Saga. But speaking of which, Saga, this is the animated release. Which I quite like this release, honestly, and I quite like the story. It's yeah, it's just a good story. I do need to give it a rewatch though, because I haven't watched it in quite some time. Oh dear, season 18, The Leisure Hive. It's not a good story. I'm sorry, but a lot of people don't like this story, and I'm one of them. It's just all over the place, like, and you just don't know what's happening in it. It's just, it's not a good story. I'm sorry. Just, get that back in there. Meglos. Return of the actress who played Barbara. A different world, of course. What do I think of Meglos? I like it, but it's kind of like and then it's like a 6 out of 10 situation. Yeah, it could be better in my opinion. Maybe I'll enjoy it more as I rewatch it more, since I've only watched it like once. Getting into the E-Space trilogy now. Starting off with Full Circle. I quite like this story actually. I think it's underrated. Introduction of Adric, which people don't like. What do I think of Adric? I don't hate him, but I don't like him that much either. Yeah. I enjoy this story though, and fun fact, it was written by Andrew Smith, who would become a big Finish writer. So, that's cool. State of Decay, written by Terrence Dicks. It's like this weird, like, Hammer House of Horror type of story, but like in like the late Tom Baker era. I'm not complaining, I enjoy it. It's definitely the best of the East-Face trilogy. Yeah, it's like you can see, as you can see, you have like vampires there. It's like it's a cool story. Like, let's give that one a rewatch, honestly. What isn't so much of a great story though is Warrior's Gate. It is quite honestly kind of trash. You have no idea what's going on. It's just like it's almost like mythical, but you don't understand any of the mythology involved. It's rather bizarre story, but anyway, that concludes the E-Space really. Now on Keeper of Dragon. This is in fact a good story in my opinion. Things anyway then. Yeah, good story of the return of the Master once more. A new body at last, as he would go on to say. Yeah, good story. Also the introduction of Nyssa, and then that leads into oh, I can't say for some reason. Logopolis. There we go. I said it. Not the most popular stories. And yeah, it's not the greatest finale, to be honest, but I still enjoy it, you know. For what it is, I enjoy it, you know. Yeah. Davison era now, beginning with Castelvalva. I like Castelvalva, but it doesn't really. It's kind of like all over the place. But like it's still entertaining. I enjoy it. It's just a little all over the place. Four to Doomsday. Yeah, it's a good story, honestly. I don't really hear this being talked about that much for some reason, but I really enjoyed it. Yeah, underrated in my opinion. The Visitation, I need to rewatch this because I was a bit tired when I tried watching this at the time, and I fell asleep, and I just never went back to rewatch it. So yeah, I don't even know if I could say I've seen this one. I've seen parts of it, but I've never seen it in full. Yeah, I should rewatch that. Kinder. Very psychedelic. Very psychedelic. Some people, you know, it doesn't work for them. Others it does. Which side am I on? I am on the side where it actually does work. I actually love Kinder. It's just so bonkers and entertaining. I love it. Black Orchid. Got a 2-part story here. Yeah, I like Black Orchid. There's not really much to the story, but it's still enjoyable. I feel like a lot of 2-part stories they could like do with being longer, but you know, I guess that's just, you know, it's just a part of them being 2-part stories. Earthshock, fantastic Cyberman story. I mean, just look how damn cool that design looks. Yeah, epic Cyberman story in my opinion, and also, you know, it did parts of Adric. Yeah, I think this is my favourite Peter Davison story, honestly. It's just, you know, a little, like, who doesn't like Earthshock, you know what I mean? It's just a cool story. Time flight. I mean, just look at the cover. That just says everything you need to know. It's one of the most bizarrest Doctor Who stories you'll ever see. It's extremely just bizarre, but I gotta say that it's so bad that like I enjoy it. It's like it's so bad it's funny sort of thing. Yeah, so I'll leave it as that. I enjoy Time Flight in a way. Arc of Infinity. Ugh. It's not awful, but it's not great either. It's like another situation where it's like a 6 out of 10. Yeah. I also think Omega isn't as good as he was in the Three Doctors. This is also the start of season 20. Snake Dance. A sequel to Kinder. Great story. I do think I do prefer Kinder over Snake Dance, but Snake Dance is still very good in my opinion. You know, with I think it's called Mara, I think it's called, or something like that. Next story, Mordain Undead. Great story, underrated in my opinion. I mean, I think the highlight for this story is, of course, the return of the Brigadier. It's also the introduction of what's his face? Eric, whatever his name is. Yeah. When he's first introduced, it's kind of just like a pure like pain. I mean, he's almost like a villain at the start, honestly. Because even though he's been manipulated by the Black Guardian or whatever. Oh yeah, this is the start of the Black Guardian trilogy, by the way. Terminus, pure kind of boredom. I hate to say it, but this story is just kind of boring, unfortunately. Departs of Nyssa as well, and it's not even really that good of a departure story, unfortunately. Enlightenment, on the other hand, is a very good story, though. I quite enjoy this one. It doesn't get talked about all that much, I don't think. But yeah, I enjoy Enlightenment. Some cool concepts in there. And then that's the finale of the Black Guardian trilogy. The King's Demons. Another 2-part story. I like The King's Demons. It's just, there's not much to it, of course. Also, the introduction of Chameleon, he just ends up getting put in the cupboard. But still a cool companion for his very short-lived existence. Ooh, got a good story coming up. The Five Doctors. Yeah, I like the Five Doctors a lot personally. I do prefer the Three Doctors over it, but still a very cool story in my opinion. You know, you got Patrick Troughton in there, you got, you know, John Pertwee, Peter Davison, you sort of have Tom Baker, but not really. And then you have Richard Herndon, who was the first Doctor, so you know, Hartnell would have been gone by now. Warriors of the Deep. So we're in season 21 now. Let's be honest, it's not great, is it? Like, the story isn't that bad, but the execution is just terrible. Yeah, even I can't defend Warriors of the Deep. The Awakening. I found no story. I think this is a 2 parts if I remember correctly, and yeah, it's enjoyable. I think it's almost like a somewhat of a pseudo historical, but not really. I think it's kind of in the same lines of the Androids of Tower. Frontios. I like Frontios. It's kind of like I don't know, like a 7 out of 10. So it's kind of it's just a decent story. Resurrection of the Daleks. Great Dalek story in my opinion. Yeah, good Dalek story. Kind of a start of like the darker themes. Or not necessarily the themes, just like how things are depicted. Yeah, good story though, in my opinion. I like Resurrection of the Daleks. Let's give it a rewatch. It's been a while since I watched it, actually. Planet of Fire, the introduction of I don't know why, I can't remember her name at the moment. Luck Companion. This story is pretty much just an excuse to kill off Chameleon, let's be honest. Yeah, look. Perry, there we go. Also, I don't know why I called Toro Eric earlier, but yeah, it's an actual name was Toro. I don't know how I could forget that. The Caves of Androzani. It's a fantastic finale. I mean, come on. Such a good finale. The tension is just off the roof in this story. It's just, oh, such a good finale. Like, this, in my opinion, is what like a generation story like should be. You know, just full of tension. Yeah, great story. The 6th Doctor era now. Starting off with the Trindle era. Absolutely awful. It's just send that right back. This, however, is much better. The Attack of the Cybermen. Yeah, nice little Cyberman story, honestly. It's set on Telos. Well, mainly anyway. Yeah, it's just a good story. This was always at like the weird like point where they were doing episodes like in like longer lumps. So instead of like a 4-part story, they'll have like a 2 double length. You know what I mean? It's weird that they went back to the classic format though after like 1 season. It's kind of a bit odd, but oh well. Vengeance on Varos, very good actually. Yeah, I like Vengeance on Varos. Quite a dark story as this season / era was, but yeah, good story. It's quite good in the themes of, you know, like totalitarianism and monitoring and that sort of stuff. Mark of the Warnie, introduction of the Warnie. Not many people talk about this story, you know, and the people that do talk about it don't really seem to like it. I actually quite like this story though. I don't know why, but I find it quite enjoyable. Yeah, underrated. The 2 Doctors fun story. I mean, you can't go wrong with more Patrick Troughton. Come on. Some torrents of it aren't the best. I don't think that really matters all that much, considering, you know, the highlight of the story is, you know, Patrick Troughton and Colin Baker. You know, also Jamie is back as well. Yeah, great story. Timeless. No, not a great story, is it? It's kind of boring, and like the villain like barely does anything. It's just not a good story. It's not written well. I would give that like a 2 out of 10. Honestly, it's not a great story. My special story though is Revelation of the Daleks. Yeah, great story in my opinion. Quite dark Dalek story, and like some people might not like, you know, some of the weird themes in there, like, you know, like the DJ and whatnot. That doesn't really bother me personally, but yeah, good Dalek story in my opinion. Quite dark as well. Now we're getting into the Trial of the Time Lord season. Starting off with the Mysterious Planets. It's alright. I'll give it like maybe like a 6 out of 10. Yeah, it's okay. Mind Warp, probably the best story of the Trial of the Time Lord in my opinion. Acts very much as like a sequel to Vengeance on Varos. And it's also kind of tragic when it ends up to Perry. Tower of the Voids. What do I think of Tower of the Voids? I think this is a decent story. Yeah, I like it. It's a good story. It's just the Trial of the Time Lord stories are weird because it's a part of, like, you know, the Trial of the Time Lord storyline, you know, but I almost prefer the stories better just like standalone. It's weird. The Ultimate Foe. Yeah, it's a good little 2 episodes. Good finale. I enjoyed that. Quite wacky in some places. Well, that was the end of the Colin Baker era because Colin Baker got relieved, so to say, and then just sort of banged his head in the next story. If you know, you know. Chime and the Warney. So in the Celeste McCoy era now, and it did not start well. This story is just, ugh. It's weird, like, I enjoy this story, but it's all for the wrong reasons. Like, what was the thought process in the making of this? It's like, it's one of the silliest stories I've ever seen, and not in a good way. Paradise Towers. It's alright. It was like a 6.5 out of 10. I don't know. The thing about season 24 is I don't like goofy McCoy. I like manipulative McCoy a lot more better. So that kind of drags the season down for me personally. Delta and the Bannerman. Good story actually. I quite enjoyed this one. Yeah, it's a good story. I'll say it's more like fun than anything though. But yeah, good story. Dragonfire. Finale of season 24. Yeah, Dragonfire is pretty good. The introduction of Ace, which is the best 7 Doctor companion anyway, at least on TV. We're in season 25 now. These next 2 seasons I'm a big fan of. Starting off with Remembrance of the Daleks. Best Dalek story since Genesis, in my opinion. Not to say that like the other Dalek stories are bad or anything. It's just this one's just stands out in my opinion. It's just an absolute classic. Yeah, fantastic Dalek story. I used to love rewatching that one when I was younger. The Happiness Patrol. Quite political. I enjoy it a lot though. You know, the Candyman. Yeah, good story. Quite dark and gloomy as well. So be prepared if you're gonna watch that. Silver Nemesis. I swear to God that no one likes this story apart from me. I might be the only one who actually likes Silver Nemesis. I know it's not the greatest Cybermen story, but I enjoy it regardless. It's just fun in my opinion. Yeah, I think it's just a fun story. The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. This is one of my favourite McCoy stories. You know, it's the finale of season 25, and it's just brilliant in my opinion. Great story. You might not like this one if you don't like clowns, but I don't like clowns either. But you know, I can just about tolerate it in this story. Yeah, it's a great story, lads. Right, we're in the last bit of the shelf now, so let's get to it. Season 26, the last season, Battlefield. Underrated in my opinion. I really like this story and not many talk about it. The Last Brigadier story. Got some interesting elements in there like Merlin. Yeah, really cool story honestly. And not many talk about it. Ghostlight. I enjoy Ghostlight, but the only thing is I don't really know what's going on half the time. Yeah, it's I need to rewatch that one a bit more. The Curse of Fenwick. great story, of course. Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched this. I do need to give it a rewatch, but I do remember being a very good story, and sort of the height of Dark Manipulative McCoy. At least on the TV series, anyway. Survival, the final story of the classic ever. Yeah, I like Survival a lot, actually. I wasn't sure how this was going to be when I am going into this, but I actually found myself really enjoying it. Yeah, cool story. And then now I've got some sort of Wilderness Years stuff and some other bits and bobs. K9 and Company, I'll be honest, I've never watched this, and all I've heard is that it's not very good apparently. The movie. The Almighty McGann. I do like the movie. Yeah, I like the movie, honestly. I think it's underrated. More than 30 Years in the TARDIS. I haven't watched this yet, either. And same goes for Scream with Ahsoka. And then we got the Peter Cushing Dalek films. In terms of the first Peter Cushing Dalek film, I would say I prefer the original story with the Dalek invasion of Earth. I think I actually prefer the Peter Cushing version just because of how well the pacing's done. I think it just works well as a movie. I still like, both movies and the original stories though, of course. And then we have Daleks in Colour, which is trash. Let's not talk about that. But anyway, that's the DVD, that's my Doctor Who DVD collection. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you whenever I upload a video next. See you.